an overview of what we are going to go over in the next little bit. We are going to go over the purpose of the program, the Community Arts Grant, the Individual Artist Grant, and the Arts and Education Grant, which are the 3 grant types in the umbrella. Review any key changes of the program, just to reiterate them near the end. We'll go through the application process, the review and panel process, so you have an idea of what to expect there, and then we will open it up for questions at the end. At the end of the seminar, I will send out a survey, a link to the guidelines and application, as well as a link for one-on-one consults if you feel like you need some additional information or just have some more questions, as well as a form if you want to be a part of our pilot mentorship program that we're trying out this year. And I'll go a little bit more into detail about that in a little bit. So the purpose of this program, the Statewide Community Regrant Program, was created by Niska. If you've applied in the past, you may recognize it under a different name. It was formerly called the Decentralization Grant. And this year, after 22 to 30 years of being called the Decentralization Grant, the state decided to shift to the Statewide Community Regrant, or SCR grants. It's just a name change. There's a couple other little tweaks, but the other grants that we have underneath the umbrella are all still the same grants. It's just an overhead name, so that there's a little bit less confusion with some other things. Like if you would see something for DEC, are we at Arts Grant, or is it the Department of Environmental Conservation? Things like that. So just little tweaks within the marketing. This grant is supported by the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature, and we administer funding to Livingston and Monroe counties of New York State. If you are residing in a different county and you wish to do a project within your county, there are different versions of this grant around the state, and if you give me an email, I can put you in contact with the SCR coordinator in your county. So where does this funding come from? As I said, it comes from New York State Council on the Arts, and we facilitate it through Livingston and Monroe counties. And it is from taxpayer money. So everything is distributed on the local level. We get the funding from the state level, and it comes down to really give individuals and groups on a local basis more direct and local contact to try to keep funding small within local communities. As it is taxpayer money, everyone that applies either has to be an individual or a nonprofit organization, depending on which type of grant you are applying for. And also going into stuff with the legislature, we do send reporting to the state to let them know, like, okay, we're having this many groups that are applying and things like that in an attempt to get more funding. So there will be some statistical questions you'll see on the application. None of that information is like, Sally Susie is a white woman, da, 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 da. It's all statistics that we give them to let them know we're reaching this many BIPOC individuals in our community. We would like to see more funding in this area, that sort of thing. So accommodations and grant assistance. I try to be as helpful as I can. I try to answer emails as quickly as I can and do a whole varied level of assistance. Please, 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 if you have any questions, concerns, anything like that, reach out to me. My help is free. I am here to help you and to assist you through this process. If you've done it a couple times, it can feel pretty straightforward, but that first initial time, it can be pretty intimidating to look at this massive packet of guidelines and the application and go, oh my goodness, what is all of this? So some of the things that I can help you with is your project proposal. If you have a nugget of an idea and you want to really branch it out and make it stronger, you can reach out to me and we can kind of outline it and figure out, okay, you have this concept, what can we do to make it stronger and to help build up your application? Networking, I can try to help connect you with like-minded individuals within your particular artistic area, as well as our new mentorship program. So what this is doing is connecting new applicants with previously funded grantees or individuals that have a strong history within their artistic field to try to help them through this process. I definitely can help you a lot with the actual application and how to execute it, but I don't have expertise in all artistic fields, unfortunately. So I'm going to try to help connect you with an individual in that art field or genre, what have you, to try to help you on the ground with some of those more nuanced things that I know I don't have the experience in. I can also assist you in feedback. We have a review period prior to the application where I will review what you have submitted and let you know, like, hey, this file isn't quite what we're looking for. I think this would be a stronger fit. Look at what you've submitted for your narrative and let you know if it makes sense, if you're on the right track for what is needed for the application. And then submit it back to you and open it for editing so that you can implement any changes you want before the final deadline. And then after you have submitted the application, for the final time, there is a 24-hour grace period where if I look at anything and go, that's really not right, but we can fix it really quick. For example, if you submit a budget form, but it's actually just a blank form and there's no information on it, you'd have a 24-hour period to be like, hey, you submitted the budget form, but it's blank. Can you get me the correct one by this time? And then once that period is closed, whether or not you make any changes, I will close it at whatever time I tell you. It might not be 24 hours from when you submitted it, but it would be 24 hours from when I reviewed it. So please make sure you're checking your email the deadline day. Also with that, we do have the panel review. So once the panel reviews the application, they give me feedback notes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the panel review process, but you can also get those notes back so that you know what you can do to improve your application or what you don't need to improve if we talked about something you're nervous about, what you did well, what could be strengthened for future applications next year, should you wish to apply. We do also have a paper application. It's not available online. I need you to reach out to me ahead of time. If you, for example, you yourself or you know someone that has technological issues or you don't have good Wi-Fi or something like that, let me know in advance and we can get you that paper application so you can still apply even though everything is currently online. Again, for that assistance, please email me at grants@gvartscouncil.org. Come on, there we go. So, as I said, we administer the statewide community Regrant program, and under that we have 3 different grant categories: the Community Arts Grant, the Individual Artist Grant, and the Arts and Education Grant. Individual applicants, so the individual legal applicant or organization, can submit up to 3 grant proposals for funding or $5,000, whichever is hit first. Some important dates to go over. So the main grant deadline, the final deadline where the application will close and you will not be able to do anything else, is Thursday, November 4th at 4 p.m. The website that we use, Submittable, is great in that it saves things and all of those wonderful technology things, but it does close at 3:59 and you will not be able to access or submit your application. So I highly encourage you to not be going to the final wire to get it in a day or at least a few hours before that final deadline. The review deadline, which is 3 weeks prior to that final deadline, is October 15th, and that's by end of business or regular day. The paper application, if you should need it, will be due a week prior, and that's just so I can get in contact with you, and if we need to resubmit some paper, you have time to mail that to me. I'm hoping that the panel process will take place from end of November to January, where they will receive it and review it, and we will get the information back to you with you receiving your checks. Hopefully, again, this is all subject to change. As you may know, this year is very delayed. Normally, some people would be getting ready for applications to submit. We're hoping that we'll have checks and contracts in January to February with the ceremony in February to March, but this is all subject to change at this point, and I will make sure to keep you well apprised of any changes. Projects must take place between January 1st of 2022 and December 31st of 2022. So going into some things that affects all three grant types that I wanted to put here, so I'm not repeating myself too many times, is this year we're really making a push towards inclusion and accessibility. We want to make sure this is viewed in all of our grants that we receive. Aside from arts and education, which has its own set of rules, all programs must be open to the general public. We strive to make sure that we are having broad inclusion and access to arts and cultural programming for all people. This is including the creators of the art as well as the consumers of whatever projects that you might be putting forth. And we really want to make sure that our groups are considering reaching out to individuals and community prior to submitting your grant. So for example, if you want to do a grant next year that is all around Mexican heritage, as we're in getting into Mexican Heritage Month, the Latin Heritage Month, thinking about what events those individuals of that community might want to attend. Are you really benefiting the community by having those events, or are you just saying that you're going to be doing it so that you know they will come? That sort of thing. We want you to really reach out and consider those groups and what they want, and are they willing to pay for it also if you are having it as a paid program. And also consider the different accessibility limitations of all different individuals. Groups that have limited access or are underserved in our 2 counties can include individuals that are Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, LGBTQ+, disabled, elderly, youth, rural, and or low income individuals. So there's a whole mix of people that we could be reaching, but may have different limitations. Different ways that you can reach out to these groups would be doing surveys, hosting talkbacks, direct engagement in meeting with maybe heads of different community groups and things like that. Different accessibility work that the panel will be looking for would be planning to ensure that individuals with disabilities can fully participate, resources for those that may be blind, resources for those that are deaf or hard of hearing, and general outreach. And other things that you can consider that could help would be translation, free or pay what you can events, transportation assistance, childcare, and in-person and virtual options. We don't expect you, though, to be able to hit everything. You're not going to be able to support every group, and each different way you could reach out to one group may negatively impact another group. For example, by hosting this seminar here virtually, I am able to reach out to those that may not feel comfortable going to an in-person seminar because of health concerns or maybe immunocompromised or anything like that. But then I am also directly excluding those that don't have access to a computer or strong Wi-Fi or technology. So there's different things to consider when you're reaching out and doing programs, and just to keep in mind in the back of your head. A note on workshops that sometimes comes up, that they do have to, if you're doing a workshop, for example, for community arts grant, it does have to be open and available to the public. But if you need to put a age or skill restriction in place that is acceptable, the example here, if you have an 18+ theater workshop, you are able to say, no, a 12-year-old cannot attend this theater workshop. There is mature themes we are going to be covering. I don't feel comfortable with you being there. That is allowed. You don't need to worry about things like that. So going into project eligibility, this covers all 3 grant types. So things that would be considered ineligible would be anything that is non-arts related. So hosting a gala, a benefit, or a fundraising event, which includes the entertainment costs or food or fundraising. Entertainment for like a party, such as balloons, party clowns, magic and culinary arts, martial arts, gaming, circuses, or sip and paints. Projects that are recreational, therapeutic, or rehabilitative or religious in nature, where the primary purpose is for rehabilitation, therapy, or worship, and not an art focus. For example, if you were doing something that is considered a form of art therapy, if the grant funding is focusing on the artistic portion it is allowed. But if it is the main purpose of the grant is the art therapy and focusing on the therapy portion, that could be declined. And anything that is not open for the general public to consume. Some things that are allowable expenses, so what can you spend money on? Artistic fees, we really want to make sure that we are paying artists and we are giving them a fair wage. Community outreach, advertising, and marketing efforts. Direct administrative expenses or planning and preparation for proposed projects. Efforts to increase accessibility for arts programming. Supplies and materials, as well as equipment, software subscriptions, and virtual training programs. With these, they have to be under $1,000, so you can't spend $1,000 on a new computer or hotspots, but if you need to pay for a subscription for Zoom to do different programming, or you need to buy paints, things like that, as long as you're not spending $1,000 on a single tube of paint, you are good. Things that are not fundable would be permanent equipment or capital improvements. Contingency funds or acquisitions of work, programs where children are used as professional artists and paid a fee. That can get into labor laws. You don't want to touch that. You can have children in your shows if you're doing, for example, a theater performance. They can just not be paid. Or awards or competitions that have a cash prize, juried shows, or educational scholarships, or regrants. So you're taking the money that we fund you and creating a different grant that you are then using with it. Okay, we are now going to start to branch into the specific grant types. The community arts grant will take the longest, so just as a little heads up there. Let me take a little sip of my coffee and we'll jump right into it. So the community arts grant is our largest grant type. The purpose of it is funding public and cultural projects such as exhibitions, festivals, performances, workshops, and more. Funded projects should have an arts activity as the primary focus. Grants for funding can be made in the request of $500 to $5,000, and new this year, there is no income match. So if you've applied previously, you may remember on your budget sheet, there had to be a 20% match. So for example, if you had a $10,000 grant or a grant that had $10,000 in expenses, you had to prove that you would have at least $2,000 or the 20% income. We do not have that in place for this year. This is coming from the state level where we want to make sure that groups are able to get back on their feet this year. We still highly encourage you to have some form of income, just in case you don't receive the full amount that you requested from your grant. But just know you do not have to have a 20% match this year. For mediums, these can cover a wide array of disciplines, including but not limited to visual, written, digital, traditional, experimental, and performing arts. All projects must take place between January 1st and December 31st of 2022 in the same county as the legal applicant in either Livingston or Monroe counties. And access all programs must be open and promoted for general participation. Anybody can see a sign on the street and go, ooh, that sounds fun, and walk in and attend. The scope of the funding. So community arts grants can provide project support for cultural and arts activities to the general public, and these can support organizational growth as well as public benefit. I and my staff and board do not make the final decision as to who receives a grant. It is made up of a panel of community artists and peers, and they will be the ones that make the final decision. This grant can cover workshops, exhibitions, artist studio tours, festivals, performances, including experimental programs. The goal of the community arts grant is to make quality programming available to all residents within our region and really reach out, particularly to groups with limited access. It's to assist with emerging arts organizations, individual artists, and grassroots and cultural events. support the cultural expression of our area's diverse communities, and support BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and disabled artists, and support arts and cultural organizations for these groups who are leading in this work. And we also want to use this grant to help develop and adapt to the new art world through virtual programming needs and innovative ways to support the arts and community health. Some of the funding priorities that our panels will be looking for will be new program in our region and projects initiated by new applicants, programs that support arts organizations, small or grassroots organizations, and artist-initiated projects. Supports for arts and cultural programming of organizations and grassroots groups led by Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, and LGBTQ+ or disabled workers, as well as hiring and paying these artists to produce work. Programming that engages underserved population and which demonstrates a strong, well-considered community outreach and promotion plan to reach different communities. Innovative programming that works with current guidelines. And this can include dance, film, video, media arts, writing, poetry, and much more. Obviously, we still very much encourage old applicants to apply. We love you. We love that you come back every single year to apply. But any nonprofit organization can apply. You don't necessarily have to be an arts program. But we really like reaching out and seeing new applicants who have new, bright ideas. So if you have applied in the past, I would encourage you to look at what you have done. If you received panel feedback, take a look at that and think of what you can do to change and adapt your program so it's not just kind of a copy and paste over the last few years. We're going to touch on some previously funded projects from the last few years since I started. In Livingston County, the first one I'm going to touch on is Dansville Artworks. They have produced a ferry trail. So there is little ferry doors throughout the town and the park in Dansville. And this year they focused on building a few more doors as well as incorporating more community programming. So as they did the scavenger hunt to find the doors, there was different worksheets and things that the children could do as they went along the trail to really bring the community together, especially after the last year. The Avon Community Theater produced 2 shows this summer. They did Little Mermaid Jr., as well as Magic Tree House, The Nights at Dawn. And the Wadsworth Library did 3 separate summer classes. One was architectural drawing, watercolor painting, and African drumming. In Monroe County, we had the Children's Institute, which does a series of film festivals. The Rochester Community Players did their summer Shakespeare in the Park at the Highland Bowl, and this year they did The Tempest, and half of their cast was deaf or hard of hearing, and they did sign language, and half of their cast was had regular auditory. And then Carson LaForce in 2019 did a documentary called Heroin and Hope, and it was about the opioid crisis in Monroe County, and he interviewed families of those that had passed away due to the epidemic, went to different locations where they tended to be hotspots, and also spoke with individuals that had recovered and first responders. And then finally, we had the Avenue Black Box Theater, which produced Black AF Fridays, First Friday events, which touched on different Black cultural events from spoken word to music and a whole range of beautiful events. So how do you apply for this grant? Within the Community Arts Grant, there is 3 different branches. We're going to touch on them really quickly. So there's applying as a nonprofit, applying as an individual with a community partner, or applying as an individual with a fiscal sponsor. In the past, it was all under one umbrella as fiscal sponsor, but recently I learned of a sort of a new way to break it down a little bit more, and I think it makes a little bit more sense. So we're going to use that going forward. So applying as a nonprofit, the easiest way is you have to be a nonprofit organization, either a 501c3 or other. If you are an other, please let me know and we can figure out if you are eligible. Incorporated in either Monroe or Livingston counties, and you must have a board of directors. Libraries, government entities, and tribal organizations may apply. So if you're a town, you are eligible, things like that. Things that are not eligible are public school districts, public or private universities. Sorry if you hear that beeping, that is my coffee pot turning off. New York State agencies, SUNY schools are also not eligible. Non-incorporated chapters whose parent organization is not located in Monroe or Livingston County. For example, if you are a branch of a larger organization and the main hub house is in New York City and you're a branch but you're not incorporated up here, your charter is just connected to them, you would not be eligible. You would need to find someone else to fiscally or partner sponsor you. GVCA staff and board members, so I cannot apply for this grant. Or Niska organizations that have applied directly to the state for funding in 2021. So if you did any of the round 1 through 4 funding, you would not be eligible. A note on Niska funding, a Niska organization cannot act as a fiscal or partner sponsor, and they cannot touch any funding. Easiest example is Jiva Jiva Theater in Rochester generally applies for Niska funding. If you used Jiva Theater as a venue for an event, they would not be able to touch the box office. They couldn't touch any of the funds going in or out. They couldn't touch concessions. They couldn't touch tickets, anything like that. None of the money could go through them. You would have to have your own people in place and there could be no crossing. They could not receive funding for renting the venue, things like that, because all of the Niska money and the money that I receive to give to you for grants comes from the same pool of money. So if you were to pay Jiva, they would be getting paid twice and double dipping. So they would not be eligible. We're not narking on Jiva. Jiva's great. They're just an easy example that people recognize. Some attachments you will need for your application if you are a nonprofit organization. You'll need your active board list from 2020 to 2021. A financial statement showing income and expenses for the applicant's most recent fiscal year, and your proof of nonprofit status. So going into our last 2 branches, which is the fiscal sponsor or community partner, what's the difference between the 2? A fiscal sponsor would be someone that would fiscally sponsor you if you lived in a different county. For example, I grew up in Livingston County, but I now reside in Monroe County. And if I wanted to do an event, forgetting that I'm attached to GVCA, so I can't apply for this grant, but if I wanted to, and I wanted to do an event in Livingston County, I would need to get a fiscal sponsor within Livingston County to apply for the grant. Because I am an individual and do not have attachments to a nonprofit. But if I wanted to do something up here in Monroe County where I reside now, I would have a community partner because we are within the same county. When I apply with a fiscal sponsor, their people and their organization is on the application. But a community partner, my name is on the application and I am the point person to contact. So when you're serving as a fiscal sponsor or community partner, that organization, for example, I'm just going to use your library, Kelly. If Mount Morris Library wanted to fiscally sponsor me to do a project, they could also still, and I wanted $5,000, they could also still apply for $5,000 and it wouldn't affect their amount of funding that they could do because you're fiscally sponsoring me. They could also do it, and then they could also do 2 other people and fiscally sponsor them for up to $5,000. We are looking for people to be fiscal or community partners all of the time. We usually have about 2 to 5 groups that apply using a fiscal or community partner. So it is one where I'm putting it out there. If you would like to be put on a list, or let me know that you would love to be able to support a individual or group that is not incorporated, please let me know. With the Restart grant, especially the one that we just closed, a lot of people were looking for partners, and I didn't have anybody because a lot of groups don't want to just be put on a cold call list, which totally makes sense. It's one of those of, why can't I build up this relationship with this individual rather than just having them cold call me? So I understand why, but we are putting it out there as has been a request the last couple of years of, can you give me a list of people to reach out to? So if you would like to venture into this, or at least look into it, please let me know, and I can see if we can connect you with someone that makes sense as it comes up. So getting into that, if you're applying as an individual or an unincorporated group, so you are a group that is going to get a nonprofit status, but you haven't received it yet, or what have you, you're still highly, highly encouraged to apply for this grant. As I said, Carson LaForce, who did the documentary, he is an individual. He applied with a incorporated group to be his sponsor. With this, the community partner or fiscal sponsor covers the need for the nonprofit status. So they would be the ones that would receive the check, and they would then distribute the check to you. It's up to kind of you as an individual and that group to decide what the duties for each group are, what is the relationship you're going to have. I can tell you different things that groups have done in the past, but that's really up to you and the group to decide. I get that question a lot, but it's one of those where you could have one group where literally they're just the name on the piece of paper, and they cut the check, and then you are done. You cut ties, that's all you need. And there's other groups that want to have a real relationship and help the project and be a part of the development of the project and how it goes. Kind of just varies from group to group. To be an individual or unincorporated group applying, the person whose name on the application must be at least 18 years of age and cannot be enrolled in a full-time educational program. And the community partner or fiscal sponsor must be a nonprofit organization, as this is taxpayer money. So which one should you use? How should you apply? How should you look at this? The community partner, the individual or contact person for the unincorporated group, is the legal applicant. So going back to that other example we used, if I was applying for a grant up here and I had a partner organization up here, my name would be the one on the application. And that group would need to be up here in Monroe County, as I live in Monroe County. But the check would be made to them, that group, and then they would distribute the funds to me. What do I need for paperwork for that? I need proof of residency for me, myself, showing that I live in Monroe County, and this can be a license, it could be an RG&E bill with like financial information blocked out, a cell phone bill, anything like that. I just don't want to see financial information. I just need to see your address and a date saying that you've lived there in the year 2021. A letter of commitment on letterhead from your community partner, a list of board members from that organization from 2020 and 2021, financial statements, and the proof of nonprofit status. If I am doing the fiscal sponsor branch, the fiscal sponsor would be the legal applicant. So going back to the example, if we did it and I was working with the Mount Morris Library, Kelly would be the applicant on the application. And the first contact would be that person. They do not need to reside in the same county because they are in the other county. They are covering the fiscal sponsor status. And the check would be made to them, and then they would cut it to me, or whatever relationship we established. For this, we would need a proof of residency for the legal applicant, which in this case would be the contact at the library. A letter of agreement on letterhead saying, yes, we know this person, we agree to work with them. The list of board members, a financial statement, and nonprofit status. So really the main difference comes down to where's the project taking place and where's the nonprofit that is going to be supporting you. So that's everything for the community arts grant. we're going to jump into the individual artist grant.
All yours.
Ooh, let's just make sure everybody is muted. For the individual artist grant, the focus must be on a creation of new work, not the presentation of existing work. So you're creating a new body of work to present to the community. The funding amount is between $1,000 and $2,500, and there is no match requirement. The mediums can be all expressive disciplines, including but not limited to visual, written, traditional, experimental, and performing arts. And for access, it must include one of two components with the presentation. So it's either a public presentation of either in-person or virtual, or the involvement of a specific group in the creation process, which we will touch on. The goals of this grant is to support Monroe and Livingston County artists in the creation of a new body of work, to support underrepresented artists within our region, including but not limited to BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and disabled artists. All artists, creators, makers are encouraged to apply. I use different terms there because I know not everybody considers themselves an artist. Sometimes they use different terms. If you are someone that creates something that could be whatever, please apply. We want to see what you are skilled at creating. This grant is used to highlight the vital roles artists play within our community, and especially to help in the last year to adapt to social distancing requirements through innovative new ideas. Eligibility for this grant. Artists apply directly. So even if I was the head of a theater department, I would apply directly as my own individual person for this grant. Applicants may still submit up to 3 applications or $5,000, but only one individual artist grant would be funded. For example, if I was a painter and a theater director, I could apply for one grant for a series of paintings and one for a theater workshop, but only one of those would apply or be funded. But if I wanted to, I could also apply for an individual artist grant and a community arts grant or arts and education grant, and I could have both of those funded as well. To be funded for this grant, I must be 18 years of age, a resident of Monroe or Livingston County, and you cannot be enrolled in a full-time educational program. Artist collective groups or artist collaborations are not eligible for this grant. I would encourage you to look into the community arts grant. This grant must be a single individual. Projects must be independent work initiated by the artist. An artist who applied and received this grant in the past may apply if the project took place in 2019 or earlier. 2020 and 2020 recipients are ineligible. If you applied but did not receive funding in 2020 or 2021, you can apply. So some previously funded programs in Monroe and Livingston County since I have been here. In Livingston County, we have Michelle Fambro, who's doing a theater workshop. She's writing a play, and she's going to be workshopping it. The grant covered her travel expenses to do research for the grant or for the script, as well as producing the workshop. And Ruth Henry, a few years ago, wrote the script for Bombs and Blooms, and she has since applied for community arts grants, and it is going to be the full production at the end of this month, actually. So in 2018, she did the script writing, and then over the last few years, she has slowly developed to the full production. In Monroe County, we had Jim Mott, who applied in 2018, as well as last year for 2021, and he does paintings. This year, he is going around with a family member to different areas of Monroe County that had an impact on her as a child, and he is interviewing her and then painting that area based on what their interview described, and then presenting it. Ashley Jones did a workshop series on a show called Generic White Male, which is actually being produced at Fringe this year. not related to this grant, but it is continuing on. I think it actually might have just closed, called Generic Mail. Katie B Sottaby sadly was not able to complete her project last year with COVID, but she was interviewing different individuals within the South Wedge. And then she was creating a series of mandalas, sand mandalas based on their stories, and also fundraising for the food pantry. And Athesia Benjamin created a series of portraits based around the Black female body. So as I mentioned, there is 2 different branches within this grant that you can go down. So there is either public presentation or creative process. So public presentation is what it sounds like. You take your work that you create and you present it to the public in some capacity. So it must take place in the county you reside in. So if I were to apply, I would have to do it somewhere in Monroe County. You can charge a fee if you want to. So if you're doing a show or an exhibition and you want to charge a gallery fee, you are allowed to do that. And all public presentations must be compliant with current COVID regulations. Public presentations can cover staged readings, exhibitions, booth at a farmer's market or fair, a streamed presentation that is live or recorded, or a digital gallery. This form of the proposal can change over time as needed, but there does need to be some sort of preliminary plan in place when you apply. So for the creative process, this is kind of what I described with Jim Mott, where there's some sort of direct communication and involvement during the creative process. Another great example, if you live in Livingston County or have heard of Sean Dunwoody, the grants that he works with us have been community arts grants, but the process he goes through is a perfect example of the creative process, where he creates murals, but before he creates them, he meets with members of the town or community and discusses different aspects of it. What do you feel about living here? What is the history? Different things like that, and then incorporates them into the piece. So this community involvement could be directly having those interviews. It could be, I'm creating a main piece, but members of the community are creating parallel pieces. So their students are doing their own thing, and then it's all going to be put together at the end. Or they could be involved as performers or different things like that. With this, community involvement can be done virtually as well as needed. Sorry, just looking at my notes real quick. Okay. So that is everything for the individual artist grant. So we're going to get into the arts and education grant, and this is our last grant type before we get into the process. So the purpose of the arts and education grant is to really bring teaching artists and cultural organizations or schools together to promote art within teaching environments. This grant can cover both in-school pre-K through 12 classes, as well as community classes, which can be up to senior adults. This brings teaching artists and their classroom skills into a dedicated learning environment for all ages. This grant request can go from $500 to $5,000, and similar to the community arts grant, previously there was a 20% match requirement. This year, there is no match requirement. Again, I still highly encourage you to have some form of income aside from this grant on your application, but it is not required at this time. The mediums for this can cover a wide array of things, including visual, written, digital, traditional, experimental, and performing arts. And it must take place between January 1st and December 31st of 2022 in the same county as the legal applicant, and must be either in Livingston or Monroe counties of New York State. For this grant, all programs must be with a select closed group of individuals that meets regularly in order to track progress. So what is the scope of the funding for this grant? The Arts and Education grant provides project support that, we got to fix that line, provides project support for projects that provide support too. We're going to fix that typo. Provides support for projects that take place in school in pre-K through 12 settings or community-based, for example, in a rec center or a library, what have you, and this can be preschool through adults. Grants are awarded, but are not determined by myself or my board. This is determined by community members in a panel. So again, we have branches. Within the Arts and Education grant, there is 2 branches. There's the in-school projects and community-based projects. In-school projects does what it sounds like. They take place in school, but they do not replace the classes. They work to supplement. So whatever the curriculum currently is, they are working and building off of it to help enhance it rather than replace it. For these, there needs to be a letter of commitment from the partner school to the arts education or individual that must be included to be eligible for funding, and this does need to be submitted on letterhead to show that it is an official thing, it is signed. We don't want to see just a screenshot of an email saying, yeah, you can come. Priority is really given to projects that also include the school certified art, music, dance, and/or theater teacher that may also include non-arts teachers. So for example, if you have a English teacher that really wants to enhance an aspect of a book by bringing in an artist to teach what the book is talking about, that could also be funded. Projects that also have a chance to incorporate professional development for school staff. For example, your artist has skills in another area that could be beneficial for teachers, and those teachers want to learn, and you develop a workshop with them. Projects that show strong ongoing district support. So is this a project that you've been trying to do for the last few years, but the school doesn't have funding anymore to do it themselves? This could show support, and this is something you've been wanting to do or have done, and this is just a way to continue it. Projects that make use of community resources, persons and other agencies, profit and nonprofit. So for example, if your school has a PTA and you're going to do some sort of exhibition at the end of the project, and the PTA is going to do a bake sale, that's including another group within the school district and helping to bolster the project. And we really want to focus on projects that stress process over the product. That involve students in the creative process are preferred over projects with adult control over the finished project. So we really want to see how are the students' skills going to develop over the period of time, not just we're really working hard to make sure that we can do a good show at the end, but you might have a good show at the end, but what are the students learning in the process to produce that show? Going forward, the community-based project is something that is set in a library, perhaps an after-school program, so it's not directly working with a specific class, but it is still working with the school, a community arts or arts organization. It's a lot easier to track with the in-school, but the community-based must still have a closed group of learners, and it is set to a particular group so that the skill set can be easily tracked. For example, if it's being held at an after-school program, it is, okay, these 5 kids have signed up. They're going to come every Tuesday, and they're going to be the set closed group, so you can really track their progress. It's much easier to say it and do it in the school because you're like, okay, I'm going to Miss Jones' class. They are my set of closed learners. But after school, we need to know that there is a closed group of students, be it children or adults. And again, you must have a letter of commitment from the partner organization or artist and must be included with the application to be eligible for funding. The letter of commitment should outline the details of the partner's support of the project, monetarily or otherwise. Are they able to support anything? Is everything coming from the grant? And anticipated roles and responsibilities for each partner involved, and this partnership should be on the letterhead and signed by the principal or community partner. Excuse me. The goals of the Arts and Educational Grant is to make quality programming available for students of all ages, culminating in a trackable progress of work. Example, students come in with basic music knowledge and left with an understanding of music theory and composition skills. It's to assist emerging arts organizations or individual artists and grassroots educators and connecting them with a group of students who they may not have had access to before. To support the cultural expression of our area's diverse communities, and to help adapt to the new art world through virtual programming needs and innovative ways to support arts and community health. Especially within schools, a lot of schools were not able to have programs like this in the last year. So we really want to see students have the chance for these type of programs to come back into their lives. Funding priorities. So we really want to see activities that are centered on development and implementation of skill-based study that, if applicable, includes one or more art forms. And the grant requires a minimum of 3 hands-on learning sessions, in-depth age and skill-appropriate learning opportunities, hands-on participatory creation and/or learning opportunities in one or more art forms that may culminate in exhibitions, productions, or demonstrations, but does not need to, and projects that include stated learning goals, methodologies, and outcomes, and a means for evaluation. And this will be tracked with lesson plans, which are included in the application. So some different grants that have been funded in the last few years. In Livingston County, we had Bricks That Build, which is a husband and wife duo that would go into the school and help teach the students music theory and composition. And at the end of the year, they would produce their own album and it would be available for sale. Steel Drumming with Ted Canning, and he would go in and teach the history of steel drumming and the culture around it, along with showing the students how to play the steel drum. And then we had the Resident Craft Club that works with the Livingston County Center for Nursing and Rehabilitation and brings different crafts to the residents so that they can continue to work on their hand-eye coordination to keep those skills. In Monroe County, we had Deaf Refugee Advocacy, which unfortunately was unable to complete their project this past year due to COVID, but their goal was to meet with deaf refugees that lived in Monroe County and work with them through a series of physical theater classes so that they would be able to tell their story of their life in a physical way, since they cannot express it verbally to people. Strings for Success, which is a large program that works with a local school and brings stringed instruments in and teaches them how to play them where they might not have access to them. This past year, they were able to adapt and they went to students that had previously taken the program, and they actually dropped instruments off at their homes and then did virtual classes, which was really cool because they were able to also incorporate parents in a way that they hadn't in the past. So the parents also learned how to string the instruments, how to tune them, and actually like have a more hands-on direct involvement with their students' learning. And then this past year we had Carrie Magan, who is a professor at Houghton College, who actually drove up to Brockport to one of their schools and worked with 6th graders to develop a song, and the students wrote lyrics as well as helped to compose a song that kind of encapsulated their reaction to the last year with COVID and used direct lines from their experiences. So that is it for our grant types. We're going to get into the application process and how you apply and what happens. So the applications process starts with attend a seminar or do a one-on-one consult in September and October. So you have checked the first box, you have attended a seminar, yay for you. You can, of course, attend multiple seminars or do another consult with me. That is totally cool as well. Something that is optional, not required, but still highly encouraged would be the review deadline, which again is October 15th. That is a Friday. I will review your application, let you know if you're on the right track, if there's things that you could improve, whether or not your grant kind of fits with, your application fits with the grant type you're applying for, that sort of thing. The final application is due November 4th by 4 p.m. This is all of the grants. I know in the past, Livingston County and Monroe County had 2 separate deadlines. I talked to a couple people and nobody could tell me why that was. And I think it was just when we acquired Monroe County, we just kept their deadline. But I didn't really think it was fair that Livingston County had a month less time than Monroe County. So everybody has the same deadline and it is pushed way back from what it has been. So with that, you'll just submit everything on November 4th. There will be that 24-hour grace period where I will review the application, make sure there's nothing missing or anything crazy that happened when you submitted it. And if there is, I'll give you 24 hours to fix it. After that, applications will be sent to a panel of individuals. And something we're trying new this year is applicants will have the opportunity, depending on how the first meeting with the panel goes, to receive a questionnaire if something needs to be clarified. We've had some feedback where the panel wishes they could ask questions. They wanted to get more information because they felt that some of the applications that were received in the last 2 years, they had an idea and they had an understanding, but they wanted to know more and to clarify some things. And we had a few different applicants that also expressed that they wanted to have a chance to speak with the panel. But in order to make sure that everybody stays anonymous and everyone is safe from anything like that, there may be a questionnaire that you receive that has a few specific questions based on your grant. Not everyone will receive this, and it's kind of a trial run this year to see what we think of it. The panel will hopefully meet between December and January to review the applications and make funding decisions. Again, I do not make the decisions, the panel do. They decide who gets funded and by how much. After those decisions are made, it goes to my board to have a final review and make sure it all makes sense. They say, cool. I haven't had anything where they've held it up in the past. Then, after which you are sent your contract, should you be funded, and you'll have 30 days to return that. And if you're not funded during that time period, you will receive the decline letter as well as information about the appeal process. Following receiving your contract, should you be funded, we will have, hopefully, depending on how things are in the spring, an in-person ceremony where you can all speak to each other and see what projects you're doing, and that is where I will give you your check. This past year, it was done virtually and checks were mailed priority to you with tracking codes and information. I hope to have it in person again, but again, we don't know what it'll be like in the spring of next year. So we're gonna go into the application now. So let me pull that page up real quick for you. So this is the application. You do need to make a submittable account to view this, but it's really just an email and a password, and you will be able to access all of your previous applications that you have submitted up until this, or from when you create your account. And another cool thing is it saves every couple seconds, similar to Google Docs. So you'll see it say like saved a few seconds ago. And you can also invite collaborators. So if you're working with a group or you just want to have other people in your organization, you can add them as a collaborator and they can also view the application live. So as I said, it's all the same form. So you would just click what county are you applying from, Monroe or Livingston, and then what grant type you're doing. When you first get into it, it won't have all of the questions on. Once you clicked, it just saved. Once you click, different questions will appear. If you are applying for multiple grants, you just have to make sure you save it and you do a completely different application, or completely submit one and then fill out the next. So for example, if I'm doing a community arts grant, I'd fill out the organization name, email, address, phone, this is general contact information. Are you applying with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor? What one are we on? We're community arts. So you're applying fiscal partner or community partner, describe the activities of the organization, how many volunteers, etc. Did you attend a seminar, or did you meet with me? And then these are the demographic questions. Again, this is the stuff that is for me and my office specifics, and then just is translated into statistics. It's not shared with anybody. So you don't need to worry about me saying, oh, this person is this person, they identify as this, 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 and this. It's just statistics for the state, so they have an understanding of how the counties are doing. Have you ever applied? So this grant is the statewide community regrant, formerly called DEC. If you applied to the community arts grant or the arts and education grant, you applied to that, so you would say yes. Or have you applied directly to the state? And for both of these, if you say yes, we ask what years. It is if you applied, not if you applied and were funded. Especially for Niska, if you applied this year, even if you weren't funded, you are not eligible. So that's why that question is there. And then it gets into the project information. So what is your project title? What are you doing? Your one-sentence project description. This is really your elevator pitch. This is the first line that is given to the panel. This is also the thing that I use for the quick marketing if you're funded. So you really want to make sure that this, while it is only 300 characters, encapsulates what your project is. For example, you don't want to do something that's like a show about peace and love when it is a theater show written by taking place at You want to give as much information as you can here within the limited scope. And then down here, you have 2,000 characters to tell me what your project actually is and really expand on that. Who your intended target audiences and target demographic, estimate of adults or children, and then it gets into some more narrative questions of like, what is your plan for marketing? How long has your organization been around? What have you done in the past? And this is a chance, if you're a repeat applicant, what is different about this program? What makes it special from funding in the past? What are you changing? What are you adapting? If you know who you're working with, who that will be, or who have you reached out to and you would like to partner with? Because we know for some programs, it's like, I'm applying for a grant that's literally in December of next year for a Christmas program. You might not know directly who you want to work with next December, but you have an idea of, I want to work with these people and I have requested them. And then the questions that were on the application last year that were a little bit sticky, but had to be vague in the way they were written is how will you approach this project differently than a pre-COVID project? And how will you work around any and all COVID related restrictions and issues that still may be in effect in 2022? With this second one, I do highly encourage you to consider all options. This question was a big question last year with the panel, where they felt some groups didn't have a good plan and didn't really want to fund them, where others, they felt like they went above and beyond in their planning. So while it may be easy to say, like, I'll just do whatever is the current requirements, like whatever the state and law and local government says, yes, that is a thing, but what else can you do for your location? What can you do with your group of individuals you'll be working with? The panel really liked seeing people that had that forethought. It's hard to know what things will be like. It's very up in the air, but just consider all options. And then it gets into your supplemental materials. So this is where you put your proof of nonprofit, your board of directors, your financial statement, and then the proof of residency. Another note from last year, you'll see it down here. For artistic samples, if you have, for example, a performing group and you do music or vocals or something like that, if you can include a video link, that is highly appreciated. The panel was kind of, I don't want to say miffed, but they were kind of like, we're in 2020, why can't I see a video of this person playing the saxophone rather than just a picture? I don't know how good they are by just a picture of them. Anybody can hold a saxophone up. So they really wanted to see like video examples where applicable. And then this is where you put your budget and the grant request amounts. The signature page is also available on our website, so I can show you where that is shortly as well. And then before we go back to the PowerPoint, we are going to look real quick at a budget. Can you see this? I switched tabs, so I don't know if you can see that or not. Is it still on the application? Okay, so let me do that and we will share screen and go to the budget and share. Okay, so this is an example.
Excuse me, Caitlin, is there a way to make it a little larger?
Yes, I'm gonna do that.
Thank you.
So, nope, it's at 100. This is a little bit different. This is the format we used last year. So just have that in mind. There will be another column this year for specifically for notes because the panel really wanted to see more specific notes. How are you spending the money? Where is it going? How is it being broken down? So this is a community arts grant budget form. And I just took the numbers. I previously directed high school theater, and I just inputted the numbers that I used for the project that I did at a school. So for administrative, I was paid $600 to be the director. I hired a fight coordinator to teach my students how to safely stage fight with swords. So he was paid $1,000 to come in for 5 sessions and teach the students. We estimated we would do about $1,700 in advertising for ads in the paper, as well as paying for t-shirts for all of our students to have, and mailing letters to local businesses to put ads in our program, and then some other consumable products. So batteries for all of our microphones, gels, which are the things that go in lights to make it a pretty color, and gobos, which are the stencils, so it shines something on the stage. We estimated about this much. What we needed for sets, we knew it was going to be about $400 to pay for the rights for the show and to purchase scripts for all of the students. And then again, we rented weapons, stage safe weapons, so that my students didn't beat each other up too badly. So we rented weapons from the fight coordinator. So our total expenses were about $4,737. Then we went into our income, and we did add some lines into this because our students always would do pre-sale tickets, and based on the number of students, and they each had a certain amount, we estimated that they would make about $730 selling to their families and friends. At admission, we expected it to be a lower amount because of COVID, so we only anticipated about this much. When you do your initial application, all of the numbers are anticipatory. We know things are going to change. You can't say, I know for a fact I'm going to sell 300 tickets. You don't know. It is an estimate based on prior experience. And we anticipated, we're going to get about $1,000 in ads based on what we previously have done. We added concessions. I think we added the line for concessions based on, people like candy. They'll buy some candy over the 3 shows. So our total income estimate was $2,539. In-kind contributions are things that I usually would have to pay for, but because of the nature of it, it was given to us to use. So for example, the school wasn't charging us as the drama club to rent the auditorium for rehearsals or for the actual show. So it was estimated it probably would have cost us about $700 to rent it. That was in kind. We didn't need to pay for it, as well as access to the school's printer. We didn't need to, but between the amount of ink that we used and paper, it probably would have cost about $200. So that was also in kind. So what is the total grant request? Well, we would take the number from up top here, the 4737, minus the 2,539 in income. So our total grant request would be about $2,198, and that's what I would submit. Again, if you can put in more information, so it's over 3 days, we're expecting to get this much money, etc. The panel really likes to see those details. And again, you can add lines. This is a form to adjust as you need, but we really need you to use the same form because we're getting between 20 to 40 applications. So if we're trying to review different budget forms, they can get kind of confusing. And there is Word doc and Excel forms of the budgets on the grant website under the specific grant type. You just download it, fill it out, and submit them. So we're going to go back to the seminar. We've got a couple more slides, and then we'll get into any and all questions you have. I've seen a couple have popped up, and we'll get to those really quickly. So let me share my screen. We'll do the end of this, and we will be into questions. Okay. So within the application, there is a page that talks all about what the panel, quote unquote, grades you on. So when I submit everything to the panel, they receive questions very similar to what you answered yourself. So the artistic merit of your project is whatever you say. And the panel will look at the things that you have submitted, the artistic samples, the resumes of the artists, and say, yeah, I do agree. They have proved the artistic merit of this project because of XYZ, and they will give you a rating. So the different things that they go through are the artistic merit of the project, so the quality of the samples provided, the artists in the project, the innovation and new initiatives, the community benefits, so how is it helping the community? Is it helping the community? Is there cooperation from different community groups and members, as well as accessibility, both financially and physically for the venues? The cultural diversity of the project, is it reaching a broad audience within its community? And is it a non-duplication of similar things? So is it changing each year, or is it just a copy paste? Are they bringing in different groups? How is it changing? The feasibility of it, does it have a clear plan of how it's going to go down between management, evaluation, promotion, anything around COVID, as well as the budget? The budget can be a sticking point for some people. You want to make sure that the numbers that are submitted are accurate to what your project is. You don't want to estimate that you're going to make $7,000 in ticket sales if you're a very small venue in Livingston County that can't host that many people. It's one of those of where are these numbers coming from? Are these reputable numbers based on your group? Community engagement. So is this going to engage the community? Is it public? Is it reaching a wide group? That sort of thing. And they're really going to focus again on, is it working with a broad range of individuals of age, gender, race, ability, sexuality, or economic status, or any combination thereof. So our appeal process. So as mentioned before, if you are not funded, there is a process that is in place to make sure that, for you to make sure that the process that went forward to make that decision was correct, not judgmental in any way. So dissatisfaction with not being funded or the amount you were funded is not a reason to do an appeal. The 3 eligible processes would be the ones you see on your screen. So non-presentation of information, which is information you told me that I just ignored and didn't tell the panel. Misrepresentation of information, so something you told me, and if I had told the panel or submitted it in a different way, it would have changed the opinion of the panel. Or contention that there was improper procedure. So someone on the panel was biased, or the decision was just capricious and meh, it was a dumb decision. So in order to do this process, once you receive the notice that you have been denied, you would need to schedule a meeting with me either over the phone or Zoom or in person, whatever you feel comfortable with. And we'll go over the notes from the panel. What did they see in your application that didn't work for them? What do they want to see you do better on in the future? After we have that meeting, you would need to write a letter to my executive director using the 3 reasons above to explain why you feel you were not funded and it was not a correct choice. Once you've submitted that, I will create a completely different panel that had made the first decision, and we will go over your application and your reasons it was denied. Your application itself will not be reviewed on the merit of it. So what is in it it's not reviewing that, it's reviewing the process. So taking the panel notes from the first group, your notes from what happened, and any recordings or things like that from the initial panel, and going, okay, was this process upheld correctly? Was there bias? Was there something judgmental? What went wrong here? And if they find something went wrong, then there is a small pool of money that is kept aside from the initial funding, and you can receive funding. If it is not, you don't get to move forward any further, and it is closed. Yes, I think that's everything for that. So, key changes, things that, just to review if you have applied in the past or anything like that. So, key changes, virtual learning or virtual programs are eligible for this year if you want to do a virtual program. Funding for equipment cannot exceed $1,000. You cannot buy a camera for $1,000 or anything like that. All projects must meet current COVID regulations per New York State or local government. And for community arts and arts and education grants, there is currently no match requirement within the budget, but it is still highly encouraged you have something. I don't know how long this will last, if this will continue into next year, so just keep that in the back of your mind. And now we're going to get into questions, and I did see some popping up. So if you have any questions following this, please feel free to contact me at grants@gvartscouncil.org or give me a call in the office. I currently have hours on Tuesdays and Fridays in the Mount Morris office, but I can follow up with you at any other time. Our office number is 585-243-6785. I'm currently in my home office, but we are working on furnishing our office in the Hungerford building in the next week or so. So I will also be able to do meetings there and can meet in person and do things in that office or at a coffee shop or things like that. So let's get into questions. I'm going to go with the ones I have in the chat first, and then if you want to use the little like hand feature, the reaction feature, I can go from there. So, how many applications are usually receive funding, and do applications that are chosen usually receive the funding they request, or do they tend to receive a portion of the amount they request? So this past year was a fluke. I will 100% give you that. This past year, nearly everybody that applied was fully funded, and that was because we had so few applications due to COVID. Prior to that, about 70% of applications in Livingston County and 60-ish in Monroe County were funded. It's not super often that you get fully funded, but it kind of depends on the panel and their process. I have had it where one panel wanted to fully fund as many people as they could, and the money ran out very quickly because people were requesting $5,000 and they went boom, 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 done. That was the cutoff. And I've also had it where they wanted to fund as many people, but not everybody was funded. So they would do like 80%, this many people got 80% based on whatever score they did. This many people got 80%, this many people got 60, and I think they went down to 30%. There is a question within the application that is if you received 50% or less of your funding request, what would you do? How would you adapt? And they do look at that question and go, okay, this group said that they got 50%, they wouldn't be able to do so many days at this venue and would have to cut this, or they wouldn't be able to do this artist. So this is how they would adjust. Some groups say if we have 50% or less, we won't be able to go forward, and they do take that into consideration. That being said, I believe in 2019, we had 21 or 22 applications for Livingston County and about 40 total applications for Monroe County. I hope that covers all of that. This program is recorded, and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And I can put a link for that in the email where I send you like the survey and all of that stuff, so you have access to the channel. It probably won't be uploaded until sometime next week, but it will be up and available for review. Okay, so I think that's it for now. So we'll get into questions. So Wendy.
I have two pretty brief questions.
Okay.
One is, with the panels on the arts and education, is when you say that's a community panel, is that only artists on the panel, or is there also educators on the panel?
It is a mix. So all of the panels are a mix of individuals. This past year, I should also add this, when you do the appeal, if you were denied, you will get actually everybody should get it this year, but you'll get a list of how the panel identified. So for example, the way that I described it to the panel when we implemented it last year was, tell me about yourself in the most vague terms you can. So I am a cis white woman that works in arts funding and creative writing. So we had individuals that were gender fluid POC that works in theater and a cappella singing. A Black choreographer that works in the SUNY school districts, things like that. And we do have educators. We do have people that are previously retired that worked in schools. I try to make sure that we have a broad range of people that cover both all artistic types as well as gender identities and race and things like that, so that everybody has the chance to be represented in the panel to have that positive outcome.
And this is a silly one in a way, but it's been a long
questions
since I wrote a grant, and I saw your grant coming out at 2,198. And back when I was writing grants, you know, you wouldn't put in that it was $554. You'd add $2 and make it come out to 2,200, just because, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, that one, it's estimates, but those numbers that I pulled were the exact numbers of things that I did spend. So those ones I did know exact numbers, but it would be a round number of, okay, I think it's going to be this much. I think it's going to be this much. They gave me this estimate. I had the receipts for that one, so I knew exactly how much money that was.
All right.
Yeah. Oh,
I see Marcia.
yep, Marcia.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you very much for all this information. It is quite a lot. I looked at some things a few years ago. And so I'm just wondering, as far as your hours at the Hungerford building, do you know what those might be?
I don't have specific hours yet. Generally, I'm working from about either 9 to 4 or 10 to 5. And it would be on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay.
Yes, because I'm in Mount Morris Tuesday, Friday. So it's kind of flexy. That's the benefit of working from home. I can kind of adapt and change things as needed.
Yes, and that's possible too. I would think maybe people could schedule Zoom meetings to discuss this with you also.
Yes, within the email that I will send after this, ooh, there's a fly. There is a doodle form where you just click a specific time, and there's like a range of like 120 different time slots that you can select from.
I see. Okay, that's very good. Well, you seem to have such a comprehensive knowledge of what's going on here. And it's amazing that you have presented such a thorough discussion
Thank you.
this afternoon. Thank you.
Other questions, concerns, gripes?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, it's Lashonda.
Hi.
Hi. First off, congratulations on your new studio in the Hungerford.
Thank you.
Awesome building. I worked out of that building for many years.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to ask, I don't know if I missed it or not, does the grant cover for individual performing artists, or is it exclusively for visual artists?
It does cover performing artists as well. You did apply, though, you applied for the individual artists this past year, correct?
Last year, yes.
Yes. So you would not be eligible for the individual artist grant because of that, but you could
Okay.
apply for that in 2 years. But you
In 2
could
years.
use it as a community arts grant, for example, if you partnered with a theater company to produce something that way.
Okay.
So, other questions? Specific project questions? Broad, vague questions? All right. Do we feel good?
I did have a question with the arts and education. I have a friend with an after-school program that is not directly affiliated. You know, it's at a rec center, but it's a separate nonprofit. How often does that get funded versus actual schools?
I personally cannot say. I haven't had anything like that in the couple years that I have been here. But there is definitely a space for it. It's just something that I haven't personally seen. The structure is there. I just can't say from experience because I haven't been here for it.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Other questions? Okay, if we think we're good, then I think we'll wrap up here for the day. Again, I will send out an email shortly that has information with links to the guidelines and the application, as well as the mentorship program if you would like to join that, the one-on-one consult, and the survey. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.